beautiful soul. This is Kristen Strother with Uplifting Counsel. Today I'm going to talk about some things that you can do to try to find the right fit counselor. Last time I talked about things that you can do to find a counselor at all, and today we're going to dive deeper. So it's really good when you're looking for a counselor to not just go with somebody who has openings, but to try and find that good fit for you. And the reason why is because counseling is a real investment in terms of time and money and emotional energy. And it's really nice to start with somebody who's potentially a good fit from the beginning, so you're not having to say your story again to somebody new or feel like you didn't spend money in the best way because you started with somebody who's not going to be a good fit. Although we can't always avoid this, you don't know for sure, but there are some things that you can do in advance to try and find that good fit counselor. And I'm going to start right now to talk to you about 7 things that you can do. My first tip is to seek assistance from a counselor who specializes in the area that you are wanting help with. I also talked about this in a video on how to get the most out of counseling. It is probably one of the very most important things that you can do to try and find a good fit counselor. Like I discussed in the other video, if you're seeking help with anxiety, for instance, and then you find a counselor who specializes primarily in substance abuse, they might not be able to take you as far as somebody who specializes in anxiety. They might be able to provide a lot of good support. I mean, counselors have generalist counseling skills. You'll probably get something out of it, but again, maybe not as much. An additional point to make in this area is that sometimes when you look online, you'll see that a counselor lists like 20 or 30 different specialties. You want to be a little bit wary of that. Even if your issue that you're wanting help with is on that list, it's possible that they do feel comfortable in some way treating that area, but they might not be a specialist in that area. So just something that you want to check into to make sure that they actually specialize in that area that's important to you. Another tip is to take advantage of free consultations. Many counselors offer free, usually phone consultations ahead of meeting somebody because they want to help you determine fit. And I do this in my practice. I love it. It is a great time saver. What's cool about this is that it gives you a chance to ask them questions, and it gives them a chance to hear more about your situation and kind of assess the nuances of a situation to see about fit. For instance, somebody might come and say that they mostly have things related to social anxiety, and somebody else might have things more related to OCD. Both of them might start by saying they're feeling anxious about something, but different kinds of things are causing the anxiety, and a counselor might feel like they may or may not be a fit for what the person is seeking help with. So it's really helpful that way. Also, it's a great way to start seeing about potential personality fit with your counselor because you're getting that first vibe from them. I will say though, as a little extra thing, is that although vibes are important, we don't always know perfectly upon first talking with somebody. Even for me on the counselor side of things, I might start working with somebody because I specialize in the area they're seeking help with. Like if they're seeking help with anxiety and it's in my wheelhouse and it's something I've worked with a lot, then it would totally make sense to get started together. But sometimes I'm not always totally sure about the personality fit from that first conversation. And thankfully, I probably often am happy to find out that it does end up being a good fit down the road. And so you want to be mindful of that. Now, if your gut says absolutely no way, it's good to listen to that. Like you just know from the beginning, and that's going to cause problems if from the beginning you're like, no. But if you're like on the fence about it, it might be worth giving it a shot. My next tip is to prioritize personality fit, which I briefly already mentioned. If you are wanting a long-term relationship with a counselor, it's very important to be thinking about this piece of it. If you find right away that something kind of clashes, it might not work out super great in the long run. For instance, because everybody's so different, some people might like a counselor who's more like tell it like it is, more blunt, and another person might prefer a counselor who's more gentle and encouraging. Some people like sarcastic humor, or at least don't mind it. Some people really don't like it. Part of this personality fit is that if somebody isn't a fit with you, it's going to be hard to develop trust with them, and trust is crucial to the counseling process. My next tip is to consider core beliefs. As a Christian counselor, a lot of the people that work with me are Christians that were specifically looking for a Christian counselor. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is because they are looking for somebody who has the same set of core beliefs as them, or at least similar to them, so that they're providing counsel from that belief system. And another reason is because they want somebody who can understand their belief system more. Somebody who doesn't have the same set of core beliefs, although it's not an essential part of picking a counselor, but it can be helpful. Somebody who doesn't have that may provide counsel that isn't in alignment with that person's, with the client's set of beliefs and values. One thing to consider in this area is that people have really different ideas of what their belief system entails and how it plays out in their lives. So for instance, with a Christian counselor, somebody might call themselves a Christian counselor, but the Bible doesn't play very much bearing on their lives, and they don't really use it in practice. And then somebody else might call themselves a Christian counselor, but the goal of their life is to have the Bible be the basis of their lives and their practice. So very different things to consider there. And then you get to determine how important that is to you as far as sharing that with your counselor. Now for a bit of a transition into some of the don'ts of what to do when you're looking for a great fit counselor. The first is don't always use your insurance benefits. Typically, when somebody is looking for a counselor, they start by looking for somebody who takes their insurance. Naturally, a lot of us want to be able to use our in-network insurance benefits, but a downside is that sometimes it's hard to find somebody who's a specialist in what you're seeking when using your insurance benefits. And so, like I stated before, you might still find somebody who's helpful in some capacity, but maybe doesn't have that same degree of knowledge as somebody else who might not take your insurance. Another couple things to consider with insurance that aren't necessarily related to finding that great fit counselor, but things to consider is, one, sometimes it's hard to find a counselor at all with openings, which is really frustrating. But sometimes I've heard from people that it's taken them months to try and find an in-network counselor, and they haven't been able to find anybody. Another thing is that confidentiality is limited with insurance, because at any point the insurance company can ask a counselor for records, which include case notes. A third thing that can be problematic as far as using insurance is that it does limit the kind of work that your counselor can do with you because of different insurance requirements and what they cover. Again, it is really nice to be able to use in-network insurance benefits. A great reality would be that you'd find a specialist and great fit counselor using them. Not always the case. Another thing to consider, though, is that you might have a plan that has really good out-of-network benefits. Some people, it even is the same as their in-network benefits. So definitely something to check out, because it greatly increases the amount of counselors that you could potentially see. My next tip is don't always consider price. This kind of goes hand in hand with the don't always use your insurance. The price of counseling sessions varies greatly from provider to provider, and this is an area where the amount that you pay might be connected to the service that you receive. Might. Sometimes, let's say somebody is providing sliding scale services of $70, and in certain cases, perhaps the service that you're receiving is not to the same level as the service you receive from somebody who charges $300. But again, not always the case, because there are a lot of really great counselors who offer sliding scale because they really want to make counseling more accessible to people. Or there are some people who charge a whole lot, and it doesn't actually mean that their level of clinical knowledge is higher than somebody that charges less. But this is especially important to consider if you're choosing between two people who have somewhat similar prices that they're charging. let's say one charges $125 and the other charges $175, and you're really feeling in your gut that the one charging $175 is the better fit for you, or is just specializes in a different way and what you're looking for. So you might consider meeting with that person who charges the higher amount, especially because if they can help you move farther faster, it might actually be a better use of finances. And my final tip for today is don't always base your search for a counselor on location. So that is another way that you can greatly expand the amount of counselors that you can choose from if you don't just focus on people who are located really close to you. And in the age of telehealth, this makes it a lot easier that you can see anybody who is licensed in the state where you are located. So you could potentially find a specialist that lives hundreds of miles away from you. Now, there are some times when people choose to see somebody in person, so they base their search on location. Maybe they have a hard time finding a confidential space at home. I know I have a number of clients who meet with me from their cars, but that's not everybody's preference. Also, sometimes people just like to be in the same physical space as somebody else. Finding a great fit counselor is a matter of personal preference. My suggestion to you is that you stay open-minded about things that aren't necessarily deal kills, like let's say that you wanted to see somebody in person, but you find this person that seems like a good fit who offers telehealth, and then to stay diligent about things like finding somebody who specializes in what you're seeking help with. All the very best to you as you find that great fit counselor.